welcome back for the final time to Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I am your host, Sean McKinda.
And I'm your host, Jackson Keller.
Oh, that's what we needed right now, honestly. One of your longest.
Until you brought attention to the fact that this is our final main episode, I was going to go with, oh, hi, Sean. But I'm like, you know what? For one last hurrah, one more for old time's sake, my last and greatest.
So yes, this is our final mainline Beating a Dead Horse. We do still have 2 more bonus episodes for our patrons. If you are over there, patreon.com/BADHcast. I know I'm shilling that on our last episode ever, and that is a wild thing to do, but hey, you never know.
There is still time to give us money if you're so inclined.
I actually don't think that's true because I have already paused the Patreon for November and it collects on November 1st. So I think you're out of luck there, but don't take my word for it. If you don't have money, don't try and skate by. But if you have the money and you can risk losing $5, try it. The worst that happens is you get a bunch of free bonus content and all good for you. So this is going to be a Beating a Dead Horse classic in that I don't know how to segue into anything right now. Boy,
I think we're taking a moment to sort of revel in the momentousness of this occasion because, you know, we sort of prepared ourselves to say goodbye around the time of the Chappie episode, but now we're here. We've invested too much for me to not call this the last episode right now. I think I need a break from Hollywood anyway.
We did, for what it's worth, I was looking into it. We recorded over 200 episodes.
That is beautiful and wonderful. And I'm glad to have shared this wonderful experience with you, my friend.
It's been genuinely an absolute treat. And we should save some of the more sappier stuff for the end here because I'm sure we're going to have at least a couple of thank yous going out here at some point. But we should probably get into the fun stuff first.
Gonna say, you want to know what else was a wonderful experience to share with you?
Oh boy, what wasn't a wonderful experience to share with you? I watched, I think all 3 of these movies with you at one point or another. 2 of them, I think, for the first time ever with you. So this is, to clarify what we're doing, if you saw the title, you know that we're going to be talking about some of the movies that shaped us, specifically 3 terrible, terrible movies, Birdemic, The Room, and Troll 2. But we've chosen these 3 movies in particular, not just because they are quote unquote the holy trinity of bad movies or whatever you want to call them, but because they are movies that shaped who we are and our friendship from the word go.
As sad and degenerate as that is to say, it's absolutely true.
It really is. Jackson, one of the first movie-going experiences I remember was walking to the AMC across the road from our freshman dorms to watch Birdemic in theaters with Riff Tracks.
That's right. Because I was trying to remember how, I was like, oh, when was the first time I watched Birdemic with Sean? For some reason, because the one I keep going back to, even though that was the first time we saw it in the theater, I think the first time you showed it to Sam made a bigger impression on me.
Oh boy, we'll have to talk about that a little bit here too.
I was gonna say, we're gonna have to tell all the old war stories, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, that just goes to show that you and I have some fucking twisted ass brains that you found unification through these terrible movies. That's also, I think, where we saw the trailer for Delivery Man.
No,
honest to God.
Oh my God, what a legendary evening.
It really was. It has shaped us in ways that I don't think we fully understand it. I still, as soon as the birds attack in Birdemic, immediately go, Ramrod, because that line from Riff Tracks is solidified in my brain.
Oh God. Oh boy. Well, I have a story about the first time I saw Birdemic, and I believe it's
Really quick, but before we get too far into this, if you have not watched any of these movies, I would not really worry about us spoiling anything for you. We're going to be keeping these conversations broad for the most part. We'll definitely be diving a little bit into specific parts of these movies, but these are movies that really cannot be spoiled, all things considered. Even if we gave a beat by beat plot synopsis of them, there are still going to be just moments of pure unhinged insanity that you are not prepared for.
I think for Troll 2 in the Room, I agree. For Birdemic, less so. I think if you haven't seen Birdemic, you should watch it, particularly with friends, because I think some of the madness is structural madness.
For sure, but I think that even knowing that, the structure of the movie still is such that you're just not prepared. And even beyond the structural madness, sitting down to watch it for the first time and just having the music on repeat for 5 minutes is maddening.
No, it's true. I mean, not that you won't get... Well, Birdemic, let's say that is a maybe. Like, if you don't know anything about Birdemic, maybe watch that one. Because to explain why would kind of ruin the magician's trick, because that's one of my stories. But I guess to start, like, because you said that you had watched 2 of these with me. I know one of them was Birdemic. So did you watch Troll 2 or The Room just kind of on your own before?
I watched The Room before meeting you.
Yes.
That was a movie, and this was a dark realization I actually had last week when I was kind of thinking about these movies. I watched The Room because of the Nostalgia Critic way back when.
Same. Don't feel too bad. I think.
No.
Oh,
The dark realization I had is that the Nostalgia Critic began every videos with, "Hello, I'm the Nostalgia Critic." And I think my "Hello, welcome back to Beating a Dead Horse" is cribbed straight from the Nostalgia Critic.
okay, you're right. That's so much worse. Well, all right. So, I mean, we all rightfully shit on the Nostalgia Critic now, but like I think people tend to forget just how genuinely popular he was.
Oh my God, Channel Awesome was the biggest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Dragon Ball Z Abridged started on Channel Awesome. Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged Channel Awesome. Lindsay Ellis was on Channel Awesome. Linkara, Todd and the Shadows, all of these people got started there, and Nostalgia Critic was still the biggest draw of that website.
No, it's crazy. Because I remember that I first found out about the Nostalgia Critic because he did like a Freddy versus Jason episode sort of thing with the Angry Video Game Nerd. They had like a fake feud, and I was really into the Angry Video Game Nerd. Another thing that hasn't especially held up, frankly. But you know, we're kind of getting away. That's a very, needless to say though, that is still a dreadful thought to have, a dreadful realization. Oh God.
So I watched The Room because of the Nostalgia Critic, and I watched it probably like 2 or 3 times in high school. I adored that movie. I did not, to be clear, rewatch The Room ahead of this podcast because I have seen it 3 times in theaters and I don't know, probably 10 times outside of that. I can quote most of that movie from memory. I'm like, I don't need to rewatch this movie. And honestly, I think part of the charm is that I didn't. I just know that movie hands down perfectly. It is incredible. I own it on Blu-ray. I also own the Birdemic now on Blu-ray as well.
I have DVDs of both Troll 2 and The Room. I wish I had a DVD of Birdemic or a Blu-ray, but it's kind of, I mean, I'm not going to take any of my fucking DVDs with me to Japan. Like, are you kidding me? But
try explaining that. Like, why did you bring this DVD copy of The Room to Japan? Now try and explain that to a Japanese person why you did that.
Well, I was actually thinking about this. This is sort of because I rewatched all of them, and the reason I did that is, one, I don't think I have ever sat down and watched Troll 2 or Birdemic without the context of like, either just a rowdy group of friends or like showing it to some like unsuspecting new person. I think The Room I did watch on my own after watching the Nostalgia Critic video, but that was just because like I was curious about it. Like I didn't know there was a whole like subculture at that point. After that, like every time I watch The Room, and these are all movies I've seen. Birdemic I've seen the least, but even so, it's probably within the realm of like at least 7 times at this point.
I would say I'm about the same with Birdemic. Troll 2 is by far my least. Was literally the second time I have ever watched it, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Maybe third time, but
yeah. So because the first time, I guess, like I think even before I watched the Nostalgia Critic, I think this part of the reason I have a special little place in my heart for Troll 2 for 2 reasons. First is that I also, around that time, watched the excellent documentary about it, Best Worst Movie. And I rewatched that as well, just because it's been a minute, and I love that movie. Genuinely great documentary. Everyone should watch it. Makes a great double feature with Troll 2. But Troll 2 was kind of my first. And it was one that I more or less sought out on my own. Because the only thing I knew about Troll 2 was that they're eating her, and then they're going to eat me. Oh my God. That was a pretty like infamous reaction video for a while. Like that was a pretty big meme on its own. And I had seen that and was just sort of curious about what that was. So I sat down with my friend Sam, we watched the whole movie, and that, oh my God, that's not even the funniest fucking part of that movie. There were 5 times that me and my friend Sam, keep in mind we were high schoolers, but part of this is shaped by nostalgia, but I still love these parts. There were 5 different times where Sam and I had to pause the movie because we were laughing so hard we were like crying on the floor because of what had just happened. Like that's how much we love Troll 2. And I'm going to be honest, even watching it alone, the part where the priest suddenly grabs his face and he screams still really gets me. Like the other ones I've prepared myself now for, but like the timing on that, just that, like he looks up and whap, like it's real good. So that was my first experience with sort of the bad movie thing. I didn't realize it was like a whole subculture, and The Room sort of cemented it. Unfortunately, I don't have as interesting of a story because, again, I too kind of just got exposed to it regrettably through the Nostalgia Critic. But Birdemic.
I have no idea how you got exposed to Birdemic. You've definitely told me at some point. I do not remember. I just know that you said, Sean, they're showing Birdemic at this AMC. You have to come with me. You will absolutely love it.
Yes. Because Birdemic, I was sitting around with my pal, my cousin
my God,
Duncan.
Jackson, this is perfect. Hang on. I just realized something.
Yeah.
Do you remember when our freshman year, we almost walked like 8 miles to go watch The Room at midnight?
Oh my God, I do remember this.
This was around Halloween. We were talking about doing that for Halloween.
It all comes full fucking circle.
Wow.
I mean, 2 of these films are ostensibly horror films. The third one stars a movie monster. So, perfect viewing for, the Halloween inclined. Wow, I do remember that. Yeah, why didn't we go?
Because it was an 8-mile walk and 30 degrees.
Fair.
It was a good enough reason for me to stay home.
So the first time I saw Birdemic, it was when it was still on Netflix, and I think I had heard the name Birdemic once, which is why I think, because in my memory I hadn't known anything about it, but like I think I'd heard the name, but otherwise didn't know anything else. And me and my friend Duncan, my cousin, we were hanging out. We had nothing to laugh with, nothing to laugh at, enjoying some solitude, perhaps. That's a deep cut.
For 4 people.
So I saw that Birdemic was on Netflix, and I'm like, this sounds like schlock. Let's put it on. And we had 2 sort of moments of realization with it. The first was when I knew in my heart that I was going to watch something that I would hold in similar esteem to Troll 2 and The Room. It's at the very beginning. It's the music. It's the use of the music where it's like the first shot is like this horrible like POV Dutch angle where they just like set the fucking I don't know if it's the first shot, but I think it's the transition shot where he's like, there's one of the many scenes of Ramrod driving his car around, and there's just the stock and has like a little like foreboding, finger quotes thing to it.
That is not even an exaggeration of how that music sounds. That is almost note perfect.
Yeah, there's only like 3 it's like a loop about that long. There's a little bit more to it.
And
but
then you can still tell when it ends and starts again. That's the craziest part.
So it's it's playing through the credits. It's like, all right, whatever. And you get to the end, what you think is the end of the track, where he's just driving around, and you think the movie's about to start. And there is like a solid 5 seconds of silence before it just starts up again. And me and Duncan just like looked at each other and started fucking dying, and we knew like, oh, we were like, again, I had maybe heard the name like once. I had no idea that it was considered like legendary the way The Room is. And we knew we were in for something legendary at that point. So the other one thing I kept saying in our first viewing of oh my God, I almost called it The Room. In our first viewing of Birdemic, one of the biggest laughs that Birdemic got out of us was because I kept saying, where the fuck are the birds? Where the fuck are they? This movie's called Birdemic. Give me some fucking birds. And there were the parrots. There were some terrible CGI composited stock footage parrots on their date with some really, really disgustingly corny like stock love music, and that was very funny. That put us on the floor laughing. Great moment. But then at the 40-minute mark of the movie, I got so pissed off that in this movie called Birdemic, we still hadn't seen any birds. I paused it and I turned to Duncan and I said, if we don't see any goddamn birds in the next 5 minutes, I am shutting the movie off. And lo and behold, at exactly the 45-minute mark, oh, are there birds?
Shock and terror.
Oh, are there birds? So that's sort of what I mean, because like Birdemic, it's a little, I kind of think of these on sort of a sliding scale, because I think that, to be honest, all of these movies were a little more difficult for me to sit through alone. It's definitely not the same experience as like being in with a group of rowdy friends, and definitely not the same experience as, having someone's diverginating viewing of one of these movies, shall we say.
I do wonder if some of the movies that we've talked about previously, where we were just kind of like, this was really boring but insane, would have been better if we were in the same room together and we could have like joked about them.
That's how I felt about Cats, basically, I think, because like while I was watching these, I felt very similarly as I did to the way that I felt about Cats, where like, for the first stretch was very funny, but then after a while you get sort of accustomed to the movie and it stops being so entertaining when you don't have a bunch of people like firing each other up.
To be clear, no, that's just how Cats works. I've seen this movie multiple times with people. It's hilarious for the first half. About midway through, you get the first hit of memories and no one laughs until fucking Skimbleshake shows up again. It kicks off. It absolutely just pops off. Jesus Christ. And then is great through the ending. But you definitely have like when Gus. Oh boy, when Gus shows up, it is so bad.
So, that's fair. You are the Cats expert here.
I'm more thinking in particular about like the Jaws movies that we watched.
Yeah. I'm sure they would have been more fun. I don't think they would have the same staying power, because sort of what I was getting at is that I think that the reason I'm emphasizing structure is that there are similarities between these movies, but they're all fairly unique and sort of like a sliding scale that I kind of put Birdemic on one end and Troll 2 on the other. And The Room's kind of in the middle, but it's also kind of an outlier. And I'm mostly in terms of talking about like the madness factor. And I don't mean like madness as in how much crazy shit happens in the movie. I mean like madness is that you feel like you're losing your mind watching it. And that's, for me, the hardest one to sit through alone was definitely Birdemic for that reason, because it is the most like embarrassing technically. And like there were parts of it that I felt like I was just getting a migraine. Like I had to pick up the Nintendo Switch and like play Star Fox for a bit. But what makes Birdemic such a special joy, it's like the Shenmue of cinema, and that like there, because so many stretches of it are so fucking boring. Like and nothing happens in the movie, and you get so frustrated that when stuff happens, you are begging for death. You are begging to go back to when the funniest, craziest thing was, the boardroom meeting or whatever. Like, yeah, exactly. Troll 2, on the other hand, and this is why I think. I see what you did there.
It's one of my favorite scenes in film. I love that
it's
so
It's
much.
really great. It's really, and again, not to say that there's not a lot of like really funny shit like that in the first 45 minutes of Birdemic, but there's also just a lot of scenes of him driving and getting gas and all that fucking shit.
And weirdly
like,
staring at nothing. And
yeah. Like, whereas Troll 2 is sort of a meme a minute, which I'm coming to appreciate more about myself. I think especially after the Revenge of the Sith conversation, is that like it's got strong Sonic Adventure 2 energy once again. Whereas I like it when I feel like every single frame something stupid is happening. And that's how I feel about Troll 2. But the trade-off is that like Troll 2 doesn't have that feeling you're losing your marbles watching it. Not like Birdemic, and to a smaller extent The Room, because The Room has a lot of, I think, more iconic like standout scenes, but there also are lots of stretches where it's just like Lisa and her mother going like, "Oh, you should marry Johnny. He'll be very good for you," and like that sort of thing. And I think that's the difference. Whereas like Troll 2, it's firing on all cylinders. There's always someone making a stupid face or saying some like poorly translated line or some little like, goblin with where you can see his like lips and his real face behind the mask. Like there's always something going on. And that's why I love Troll 2 so much, and also the documentary, and most importantly, nostalgia.
And also, funnily enough, why I am not as big of a fan of Troll 2. I love just those lows and highs of Birdemic. I think actually Birdemic is my favorite of this unholy trinity. I adore just going from that boring ass pumpkin festival scene and then segueing immediately into hanging out with my family. Oh my God. Oh, it makes me so happy every time. And I rewatched this with friends the other day, and like there are parts of it that I forget are coming, and then they happen, and it is glorious in every way, shape, and form. I love those lows and highs. I love every second of it so fucking much. Whereas Troll 2 is just a meme a minute and weird and strange, and it's just like it becomes so consistently off kilter to me that I kind of lose that joy of when things especially strange happen. And sure, there are still moments like the popcorn scene that still take me right back into what the fuck is happening, but it feels like less of a high when the baseline is so much higher than it is in things like Birdemic. So it's still weird, it's still strange, but Sam described it as a community theater production, and I think that is an incredibly accurate description of what Troll 2 is, because even at its weirdest, it just is people being slightly off kilter, and that is funny, yeah, but it just doesn't deliver that that I want from my bad movies.
I think there's another key difference. Community theater, I totally agree. That's a great description of it, and that also gets to I think the heart, when you consider the creator, I think like if I had to rank them, I've long said that Troll 2 is my favorite. I don't think that's true anymore. I think The Room is my favorite, as kind of uncool as that is to say, because James Franco made a movie about it, it's so passé. No. The Room will never be passé. The Room will never be a memory. There will never be anything fucking like it, because there is no person on this planet like Tommy Wiseau. And it is such and for me, I think The Room has a less trying balance, shall we say, between the lows and the highs. Because I do agree. I think that part of maybe the main fun of Birdemic for me is the arc of like going from like completely fucking asinine, horrible, boring to like, oh my God, like, we're watching an Inconvenient Truth now. But with The Room's kind of got that balance too. But like whenever Tommy shows up on set, I'm like rubbing my hands together. I'm like, oh, every word out of that. It's like if you put Tommy Wiseau is like the personification of Troll 2 put in Birdemic. Every line he says is gold. Everything he does is a meme. And yet he's surrounded by this, befuddling like inanity of it all. Also, I guess Denny kind of gets there. Everything about Denny's pretty inexplicable too.
Yeah, for sure. I do just want to interject really quick, because you did mention the Franco Room movie, The Disaster Artist. And I just want to interject and say, fuck The Disaster Artist. Read the book. The book is great. The movie sucks shit.
I should watch that movie. I should give it a go. I've heard mixed things. People seem to be really split. They either really, really like it or really, really don't.
I think that let me kind of explain my thought process on this and why I think that you, Jackson, won't like it.
That's kind of my gut check, but like I feel like I should not just go off my gut check,
The reason behind it is entirely that if you have read the book, The Disaster Artist, it glosses over a lot of the kind of abuse and insanity that went on in the set to more so glorify The Room and Tommy Wiseau in a way that feels kind of gross. So like if you haven't read the book, you'll probably enjoy it. If you've read the book, I think it just does a big disservice to the story of The Room.
That tends to be, I think, the reaction. The people who liked the movie, I'm pretty sure by and large haven't read the book. So I mean that tracks. That's also you should watch the Troll 2 documentary, by the way. It's more it's got a similar human core to it, but it's a little less. It's a little less sinister.
Yeah, I meant to watch it, but Sam has been sick over the past couple days, and I couldn't make her sit through multiple troll sections.
See, I don't know. I don't know how she feels about documentaries, what she wants out of a documentary, but like that's legitimately like a great movie. But I understand.
Oh, I'm sure it would be, but I also was a little like, I don't know that I can go for more troll right now.
So yeah, I guess if I had to rank them, like coming back to that, I guess I would go Room eking out Troll 2. Decent distance between, not huge, but a little bit between Troll 2 and Birdemic. I like it's hard to say because like mixing and matching the right crowds. I think the best, certainly like with you, I have a lot of the best stories about Birdemic. But then there are also good memes that like as sort of like a test, like a martial arts master test. I've made every serious romantic partner I've ever had watch Troll 2 with me within like the first 2 weeks of us dating.
Yikes. But I suppose I don't have much room to talk.
I was gonna say, don't you dare yikes me on that one, young man.
Yeah, the fact that Sam is still with me is insane. Just a bit of context to this story. Our house in college was affectionately, but also not, called the Hovel, because it was a nightmare house that was falling apart, had no AC, and was just generally pretty gross before we got there.
The basement looks like Mr. Plinkett's basement, unironically.
Yeah, it was rough. And so the first time that I brought Sam over, and this must have been fairly early in our relationship to
this was the first time I met her.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. To meet everyone was to watch Birdemic on our TV, and she's still with me. I think I've done some irreparable damage because she also likes bad movies now, and she did not like the experience of watching that movie in that house when we did it.
Oh God. Well, I guess to come back around, now that I've said my piece, I think my ranking would be The Room, Troll 2, Birdemic, but they're all legends in my heart. They're all legends in my heart.
Well, I guess this actually would probably be a great way to segue into a little bit of a broader discussion I wanted to have, and that is just about, like, we've talked a lot about why we love these movies, but like what they have done to shape us and how we critique things in a lot of ways. I mean, we've talked a lot about our parabola, and I think we should really dive back into that and like how we've established that and like what it means for us when we watch things like Hellraiser 8, that we have such an appreciation for just terrible movies, because I think watching these awful movies really kind of snaps some different things into focus. It changes things that might have been like, wow, that movie was the worst movie I've ever seen, into, yeah, that movie was really average and not that bad, just because we know how bad film can actually be.
Yes. Well, yeah, because the mediocre valley, great name from Eye Patch Wolf. You stole it from us. I require dividends, my beautiful Irish lad. Just kidding. Love that guy.
He's great. Absolutely wonderful. But we did definitely have this mediocrity valley before his video came out, and we have the receipts for it. We've got that dating back to like 3 years ago.
Yeah, the idea of the mediocre valley is that you have a graph, and on the x-axis you have as close to you can get of like, all art is subjective, but like what we think of as objective quality in a movie.
Your Citizen Kanes, that type of thing, like just perfection, or as close as you can get.
Yes. So on the far right, you have like a Citizen Kane and like the high quality, and on the other side you have something like The Room or Birdemic. But then on the y-axis you have a gradient of unenjoyable. In fact, I would change Eye Patch Wolf's word from unenjoyable to miserable.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So you have miserable to enjoyable. What ends up happening is that stuff that's legitimately great is legitimately great, and therefore doesn't need explaining. And
in fact, we sometimes really struggle to explain why it's great.
Yeah. These are your interesting movies, shall we say. But obvious, but then you have something like these movies where it's just an absolute tire fire when it comes to craft, but nonetheless there's something about it that makes it nearly as entertaining, maybe more entertaining than a genuinely quality film. And then in the middle you have stuff that's not good enough to be good, but it's not bad enough to be funny, basically.
Let's cut the shit. You have Independence Day 2.
You have Independence Day 2. You have Independence Day 2. Right down there, smack dab at the bottom of, competently made yet miserable.
Mm-hmm. And the one thing that's really important about both of these peaks on either side of the valley is that they both have incredible things to teach you about film and show you why you like certain things about film and teach you about your own tastes. Like watching The Room, you start to understand what makes good acting and where story is, and you start to, the one thing that's so incredible about The Room after watching Citizen Kane is that it's trying to be Citizen Kane, and
it's
that's
trying so
hilarious.
Hard. that room trashing scene, so it's already extremely funny. So much funnier when you've actually seen the original Citizen Kane.
And you realize how much it butchers it.
Yeah, and cool, because I think that, like, you know, if I think about what I've taken away from these movies is a little different. And, you know, with Troll 2, it's sort of what I've been kind of alluding to with, like, Revenge of the Sith and Sonic Adventure 2 is my go-to comparison for this, is that, like, I really like it when I like a movie that's snappy. And I like this in both my bad movies and my good movies. Like, I really like something. I'm big on the structure. Like, when I write, I try to, like, have something that's page turner, and several people have used that to describe my book, Kelly is Unbreakable. You can buy it now.
Chill.
But like, I really value that, and you can see that in my writing, and that's not because, like, Troll 2 is well structured. What Troll 2 taught me was, like, all right, you better be making things happen. Like, you've got an audience. Like, they're giving some of their precious time to you. You better make sure they don't feel like you're wasting a second of it. Which is, you know, almost contradictory to the, you know, the lesson I learned from Birdemic, which is, like, with a more trying sort of pacing, like, you can create wonders. And I mean, that's also true of, like, you know, something like a 2001. Like, 2001's got pacing that is pretty trying, but, you know, the same principle holds true, that, like, you can have, like, you know, 30 minutes of apes at the beginning, but, like, when you figure out why the apes are there, like, you feel euphoric.
And I think that's the big thing as to why I honestly really like Birdemic and stuff like that, is because this is something that we've even talked about, is, like, there is something great about just a banality of meandering. We were talking about this with Mystery Train, which is an interesting movie because it still has those really high peaks to it. And I love that we can spend a lot of time just meandering through things and finding out little things about these characters, even if they're utterly insane things about fucking solar panels that have nothing to do. Sorry, solar panels that have nothing to do with anything else.
This right there gonna be where I put your solar panel.
It's so. I love Birdemic a lot for those values.
What does he say? It's not this right there is gonna, like, that's the thing, is that you can never, like, because the sound mixing in Birdemic is so bad, like, you feel like you're taking a test, like, trying to figure out what the fuck anybody's saying.
My brain refuses to hold in the fact that the first line in the movie is that awful hey noise. And it's even better now, because after editing audio for so long, I finally understand what they did there. I thought they added it in post. No, what they did was they edited out everything around it. I love that. I love that so much. And they didn't fade in on it. They didn't fade in on the dining sounds or anything like that. No, they just hard cut. Hey, hard cut.
And then it goes back to, like, the noise in the background.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's really good. It's really, really good.
That movie got zero room tone at any point, and it's I mean, that might be part of the reason why I like that movie so much too, is that the audio on it is the worst of any of these three movies. It is a nightmare.
By far. I think the audio is why it is funny, but, like, there's something about audio that, like, gets under my skin on, like, there are parts of Birdemic that, like, make me recoil on a primal level because of the audio.
Yeah, entirely. For sure. Again, I have been editing this podcast for 4 fucking years. I know a thing or two about audio at this point. God, that recoil I love. Oh my God.
Yes, you know, the Catholic self-punishment is coming out one last time.
The pleasure and pain of Hellraiser 8.
Oh God. Yeah, no, it's funny because The Room is kind of a outlier because in terms of content, Troll 2 and Birdemic are more similar in that, like, they're similar genres. They're monster movies. And, The Room is a drama.
That's a stretch.
It's the worst drama ever made, but it is a drama. But that's what I think why I find it so magnetizing is that, like, Tommy Wiseau, even without the context of the Disaster Artist, or even what we've learned since the book The Disaster Artist, like the fact that it was a big deal when people found out how old Tommy Wiseau was and what his real name is, like and the fact that he tried to sue a documentarian who made that knowledge public to keep it from going public, like that's beautiful. The Room.
I mean, to be clear, we didn't really need anyone to tell us. We all know his name is D.B. Cooper. It's fine.
It's fine. Because I think that, like, there's something about The Room. There is, one of the things, if you do watch the Troll 2 documentary, there is, like, some, with a lot of the crew, some, like, people, like, hopes and dreams and stuff. And that's one thing that's really wonderful about that documentary is that it focuses on sort of this cast of characters who are real people and kind of, like, tracks with them a little bit and gets you to empathize with them. But with The Room, it's like this is the product of someone who is not well, someone who has had a big dream.
Had a big breakup as well, very clearly.
Yeah, very, very clearly. Like, The Room is like pure id. Like, in a lot of ways, like, anyone who releases any sort of fiction is Tommy Wiseau. It's just a matter of, like, how good are you at masking that sort of raw, aching, like, dumb ape animal, like, thing.
So, Jackson, who represents you in Kelly is Unbreakable?
Oh, they both do. Catch me on different days. I'll tell you a different one. So, and I think that's maybe another reason that's even more so than genre. I think maybe the biggest difference between The Room and the other two, although they all are pretty different, because Troll 2, another thing, you and Sam had mentioned the community theater aspect, and I think part of a product of that is that the director was, just this Italian filmmaker who had made like 200 other movies. He barely remembers making Troll 2 because he just pumps that shit out. And he's still, if you watch the documentary, you can see that he's still a maniac. Like, people who are like, yeah, man, Troll 2 was so bad. And he's like, yeah, you say it's a bad movie. I make a very good movie. Like he's, he's still crazy. You have to be to make something like this. But he's a lot more, Troll 2 wasn't the passion project the Room was, and Birdemic was obviously more of that kind of passion project, in that it was, well, let me take sort of my climate activism and put it through the lens of this of cinema, of what I love about cinema, do kind of my, you can tell that's sort of where the idea came about, like, oh, I'm gonna do a Hitchcock send up, but my spin on it's going to be the environmentalism angle, right? And that's very different, because that James Nguyen was a man with a message, a man with a very thuddingly obvious message. Tommy Wiseau did not have a message. He was just screaming into the void.
and most of that screaming was women.
Like 90% of that screaming. It's basically a temper tantrum.
I mean, it's a temper tantrum defined by his pale attempt at mimicking Citizen Kane.
Yes. Yes. It's a temper tantrum. It's like a desperate attempt. And this is something that's, not as clear about the Disaster Artist, but, like, not just that, Tommy Wiseau wants to make Citizen Kane, although it's still pretty clear. It's hard to tell, like, what you can kind of piece together, because the book's been out forever and I read it when it came out, so, like, I've known some of the backstory for longer than I haven't at this point. But because, yeah, even in the movie itself, you can kind of tell that, like, Tommy is casting himself as the main character, and it's not just like he's casting himself as, like, the Charles Foster Kane, like, the great man with the great performance. He's casting himself as, like, a mid-20s, like late 20s, early 30s, like banker palling around with all of his like handsome young American friends. That dude doesn't just want to be an actor. He wants to be the sexy movie star, and he's just not. He's just never going to be that. And there's something really, really sad and human about that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why like, because Tommy Wiseau, like, there it was a lot of like horrible, manipulative, like abusive shit. Particularly on the set of The Room, and it's harder to feel much fondness for Tommy Wiseau these days because he's sold out, and even James Nguyen kind of sold out a little bit by making that
Birdemic 2.
Birdemic. Yeah. All you had to tell me was that he put zombies in it. I've never watched that movie, and I probably never will.
Jesus, I didn't know that he put zombies in it. I mean, I had no interest already, but like, fuck.
So yeah, they both kind of sold out, and the director of Troll 2 kind of had sold out before he even made it. But you can tell that at the core of The Room, there is like, it didn't have to go this way for Tommy. Like, it's sad that, he's ended up in sort of this dark, miserable place. And, what you kind of see from the Disaster Artist and the records of like the abusive and the creepy and the like stalker, like obsessive behavior, like that darkness like spills out onto the crew. So it's such like a achingly human story. Like we all, whether we like to admit it or not, that we all got a part of us like Tommy Wiseau. He just doesn't know how to hide his freak flag as well.
Mm-hmm. A final set of questions for us, just where we're at right now.
Yeah.
What do we think that the new trinity of bad movies is going to be? Just from like early guesses. Like what are we feeling right now?
I think Cats is a strong contender, genuinely.
So here's my actual hot take on that, because I don't know that that's true. I think that's a really good movie for like the millennials, but I don't know that it's going to have the same staying power as something like Birdemic or The Room or Troll 2. Ooh, it might be a good Troll 2 actually.
I think it's got more in common with that, because I mean that's a bit of a different situation too, because that is an acclaimed filmmaker doing something embarrassing. And whether or not Tom Hooper deserves that acclaim, I've seen 3 of his movies. 2 of them were bad. I kind of like The King's Speech when I saw it, but that in and of itself is a distinction from a workman like I'm gonna pump out a Troll 2 because I can, versus the grand visions to one degree or another of Nguyen and Wiseau.
For sure. It's an interesting comparison, because obviously I don't think we're going to see like an exact one-to-one replication of this trilogy. I think that these are 3 movies that strike once in a millennia, and I think that's kind of the trick to these bad movies, is finding the new set that might have some similarities to the previous trilogy, but definitely some new spins on them.
Yeah, and because the other thing about these movies too is that like they all came out, if not in different decades, then pretty close to it. Because Troll 2 came out at the beginning of the 90s. The Room is very much like a 2003 product, and Birdemic, I want to say, it was like 2009, 2010, and like you can tell like the Room. It is very mid 2000s. It's very like, adult sort of Gen X, like older millennial, like there is sort of a Obama era gloss of weak environmentalism on Birdemic. And like, so I think that it's hard to say, because these movies in a lot of ways are, only could have existed as products of the time. Again, the Room's kind of the outlier here, because Troll 2, it's like a cheap, like, monster movie, like direct-to-video monster movie when those are really popular or getting made in the late 80s, like early 90s. Birdemic has a lot of markings of its era, but again, like The Room was just such a passion project. And I think that's the thing that makes The Room so truly irreplaceable. I think that's what makes it the go-to, because you don't hear as much about Troll 2 anymore.
I mean, you don't hear much about anything outside of The Room, I don't think, as much. Even Birdemic has always kind of felt like a dark horse to me. It's not one that's as common on people's tongues as The Room.
I remember for a while there, it felt like more people. I think especially after a few kind of like nostalgia critic types looking mostly at JonTron made videos about it. I think that for a while there, it was more of a contender. But like, yeah, I think that, you know, the people kept saying, I think especially the LA types who really remember like when The Room was truly like a underground cult hit because Wiseau had his billboard up for like 10 years.
Oh my God, the billboard. Yeah.
The billboard. See, like you can't make that shit up. You can't. But like after the book came out, after the Disaster Artist came out, people feel like everyone says like, oh, The Room is so overplayed. Like even I kind of felt like that for a little while. But when you come back to it, it is so. I think it's the personal touch. It's the madness, the ramblings of id that The Room is that makes it so people keep coming back to it. And I don't know if like, yeah, because there have been other movies that are funny or low budget or bad, and I part of it is also maybe a problem of saturation too. That's just a lot harder for something to kind of take the zeitgeist and stick with it now because there's so much media saturation. I mean, even like, you know, speaking of sort of YouTubers talking about bad movies, like, you know, we got introduced to Goat Story.
Oh my God.
That looks like a hilariously bad movie, but it's not like, I doubt that we'll be getting like, you know, Goat Story, you know, viewing parties just because, you know, a pretty popular YouTuber can talk about that and that'll still be just like a blip on the radar for all the other trash that's coming out, basically.
But see, that is the question I'm more getting at is like, will those become the viewing parties of the next generation of beating a dead horse, I guess?
The reason I say Cats is that Cats did have that zeitgeisty angle, and I don't know if it's got any legs, but like that was the kind of movie where everyone was clowning on it and it delivered. Like there are movies that people clown on that don't deliver, but Cats did in that regard, which is why I think that like if anything's going to have staying power. Also, Cats is like a musical, so a lot of these movies, like another big one that I actually haven't seen. Have you seen Rocky Horror?
I have, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've never seen Rocky Horror, but that's kind of, you know, the classic midnight movie. And Rocky Horror is a lot of...
I would say Rocky Horror is an entirely different beast in a lot of ways, though, because Rocky Horror is not a so bad it's good movie. It's a movie that's camp and knows exactly what it is.
No, precisely. There's a big difference, which is why, you know, we're not including it here. But the thing that Rocky Horror has is that, like, I guess for lack of a better word, kind of the theater kid crowd, the that sort of cultish feverism that like, oh, we're going to form a community around this silly thing. Because Cats is a musical. Maybe I'm biased because, you know, I was a theater kid, but like I could see some sick weirdo theater kids like hanging on to Cats and making it an institution.
I mean, it's already seeing midnight showings again. I think that the pandemic might have slowed that down a bit, but rowdy showings of Cats already exists.
So why would you say no to Cats, curiously?
My thought with Cats more than anything is just that part of it is that the back half of it does bog down really hard, really fast, which makes it harder for repeat viewings for some people, I think. But beyond that as well, I think part of what makes these movies so good is the low budgetness of it. And maybe this is just a bias because most of these movies are really low budget, but the fact that this is so high budget and was so high profile might almost undo some of like the undergroundness that makes these movies what they are. Because I think that part of the culture of bad movies stems from the fact that not everyone knows what The Room is, or at least it kind of is supposed to feel like not everyone knows what The Room is.
Yes. No, that's a good point. Because yeah, there are other bad movies. I mean, Star Wars: The Phantom Menace is kind of a bad movie that's pretty funny, but it doesn't get midnight screenings. Like,
I actually was thinking about Episode 9 as a potential because that movie is incomprehensible in how much it bounces all over the place. But like, I don't think that is going to land for it either, just because it is way too big of a movie.
It's way too big of a movie, and like it's confusing the way it bounces around. The only stuff that like I remember really laughing at was at the very end when like Palpatine's shooting lightning at the sky and Rey's throwing a spirit bomb at him and that shit. But because a lot of the plot is just sort of like, wait, we're doing what now? Like it's more like the Amazing Spider-Man 2 in that way.
Yeah, I think part of that too is like you have to have the context of the other two movies, and that does not make it worthwhile.
No, I'm trying to think if there are any other contenders. I mean, it kind of came and went. Like, I mean, there are movies that I think are funny in similar ways and that maybe had the potential. Like I think The Fanatic had potential, like just because it's got the hubris angle with a big star. It's got like a not very good budget. It's got the red box failure. It had meme potential, but you know, I mean, I haven't heard anyone talk about the fucking Fanatics since.
I think the other one that we talked about would have been Serenity,
Yeah.
but like even that one as well kind of has already faded away. It might part of these two though might be that we need to wait for the resurgence to happen. Like some of this stuff it might need to be rediscovered to become those classics. So, you know, 10 years down the line when people start talking about Serenity or The Fanatic again, there you go.
Yeah, because I think that like
You just need a little biscuit sometimes.
you just need a little biscuit sometimes. And I think with movies, what's weird is that like I think that sort of the underground culture might be shifting a bit, because although there are a lot more movies that get put onto like streaming sources and stuff, in a lot of ways it's never been easier for your low budget independent film to get seen. A lot of times that translates into I'm gonna like make YouTube videos or something like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
So like the question might be that is this type of media becoming more of a YouTube thing than a movie thing?
well, yeah, because I think that we're just seeing it manifest in different ways. So like not even just YouTube, not even just like in terms of, you know, motion pictures, but Tails Gets Trolled, right? Like that sort of fits the bill, but that's a webcomic. And so I think what's happening is we're kind of seeing it evolve. But I think like as far as movies, I also think you're right that the pandemic definitely slowed things down in that regard, that it's sort of hard because, man, again, I love all these movies. Every single one of them was kind of fucking trying to sit there and watch Alone in the garage.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, for sure.
I held out the longest with Troll 2, but even by the end of that movie, I'm like, all right, I get it, Stonehenge, wrap it up.
Well, speaking of wrapping it up, I think this is probably a great place to wrap it all up. I mean, all of it, everything.
I know. I guess like to begin the wrap up process, I have one more kind of sad observation, because I was thinking about how miserable it was watching this shit alone over the course of 3 days. Partially because I realized that like because of the pandemic, because of my life situation, I have not, aside from when we got really drunk and watched Cats with Kang on his birthday, we made him watch Cats, and I was like so plastered I barely remember that. But
as an aside, there is moonshine cherries out there. Don't get them. Just don't get them.
It's real bad. It's real bad. But I think because the last time I had done something like that, I think was with you when you dug up Future World, and you know we watched that, and that wasn't a hoot and a holler the way these movies are, but that was the last time I had this sort of experience. I can't remember when the last time I watched any one of these movies with another human being. It might have been when I like started dating Haley and I made her sit down and watch all these fucking movies. Like,
so it's been a bit,
ago.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just sort of realizing that, you know, the pandemic has sort of exacerbated that culture is something like I almost had this melancholy feeling of like I'm kind of closing a chapter in my life, because I don't think that, you know, I'm about to move to Japan, and, you know, sense of humor are very different. And I think that if I understand the way that like Japanese culture tends to view things, if I said to your average person, like, hey, let's watch this movie. It's really terrible and we're going to laugh at it, I think they would like look at me like I was an absolute lunatic.
I mean, most people in America do that too, to be clear.
Most people in America do, but like I say this specifically because sarcasm is not really a thing in Japanese humor. Like if you say something that's like sarcastic, they'll kind of look at you and be like, "Oh, you just like said a thing that you don't believe, that wasn't true. Like, why is that funny?"
So you lied.
Yeah, no, precisely. So, and like, I'm wondering, like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is this sort of like cult, like, sicko, like midnight screenings of like Godzilla 15 or some 60s trash like that. Like maybe it exists. But I can't help but have this sinking feeling that like, by watching these, like right before I'm about to move there, I'm kind of closing a chapter in my life, at least for now. And it's a very melancholy feeling. I'm not going to lie. I can't believe these movies got me emotions.
Well, Jackson, if nothing else, we can always try and schedule out like a Saturday night, Sunday morning movie fest for us and the gang on Discord or something.
That's true.
We'll cue something up and dig into something terrible.
God bless fucking technology. Jesus Christ.
Oh, boy. Well, yes. Again, this is the final episode of Beating a Dead Horse, at least the final public episode. We do have 2 more coming out on our Patreon that if you're a patron already, go check it out. They're going to be great. I promise. They'll be interesting, if nothing else. For now, I just want to say, Jackson, thank you so much for doing this absolute nonsense with me for 4 fucking years. It has exhausted me for movies. I'm very excited to be able to watch media that like I want to watch without feeling bad like I should be watching the movie for the podcast instead. So I'm excited about that, but I'm also really bummed that it's ending. This has been wonderful, and thank you to everyone who's tuned in as well. This has been great. We appreciate you listening to us ramble for an hour-ish each week. I can't believe that we definitely found at least a couple people who came to the podcast who didn't know us. Why? Why are you here? We appreciate it.
You beautiful, wonderful people.
You're insane and idiots.
The best kind, though. But no, Sean, thanks so much again for inviting me in the first place to be your podcast co-host, because this is the man behind the madness. For whether you want to blame him or praise him for it.
It is actually, as you mentioned, that kind of a sad thing, because I started this podcast because you moved up to Michigan, and I'm like, I don't want to lose touch with Jackson because I'm really bad at keeping in touch with my friends. And here you are fucking off to the other side of the world instead, and we have to end it.
That is sort of a dark realization, huh?
Yeah.
We'll be fine. We'll be fine. It's been like a decade since we were in college. I ain't going anywhere.
At this point, I think we're pretty settled in here. There was that risk out when leaving college, but like I think we're good now.
No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. But yeah, thank you all so much. Sean, it's been truly a hoot and a holler. I've mentioned several times I'm done with cinema as an art form for a while. But it's only like the fact that it took 4 years and a false start for me to start truly feeling like burnt out. Hell of an accomplishment. Real testament to what a fucking blast it's been.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, hey, for the last time ever, thank you so much to our $10 patrons.
Thank you so much. Julia, Travis, Pat, Mom, Summer, the legends forever enshrined in Horsecast history.
Also, thanks to Lords of High with use of our theme song. It is Suicide, all to take off the album High Octane, Low Expectations. I'm begging of you, go check them out on Spotify. Go buy their music. They're on Bandcamp. Whatever you got to do, go do it. Also, 25 years later, site.com. There's a button of us in the corner, and there has been for a long time. But the people over there are really talented. They're doing a lot of really great writing about a lot of really great, interesting properties that you should absolutely read. A final note, Jackson and I, though we might not have the Horsecast going on, we aren't going anywhere. We both have projects in the works of one sort or another. Please follow us on Twitter. I'm Sean_McKinder on Twitter. Find me currently as Hot Shawnee Mikunda. It's Hatsune Miku and Sean McKinda combined. It's a portmanteau. It's really clever.
That's been your name for quite some time now.
I
just
really
realized.
like it, admittedly.
Well, I'm Jackson Keller at Jackson J. Keller. Still working on that YouTube video. Got sort of bogged down on that, but that'll be probably the main thing I'll be sending out into the world from Japan. Also, I mentioned a book. You can still read that if you haven't. That'd be super.
Kelly's Unbreakable, available now on Amazon.com.
Yeah. Thanks.
Wow.
Thanks, buddy.
Well, for the last time, thank you all so much. Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go